Briarwood was the kind of town that went to bed early. The kind of place where the corner store closed at 9, where porch lights clicked off one by one, like candles being snuffed in a church service. By 10, the streets were empty. Just the occasional whisper of leaves dragged across the pavement by the wind. On that night in October, the wind was restless. It rattled shutters, made swings creak on abandoned porches, and pushed dead leaves against the doors of Briarwood Elementary School. The school sat like a squat brick tomb at the edge of town, its windows reflecting nothing but the pale moonlight, its flag whipping violently, though no one was there to lower it. Inside, the hallways were still. A janitor's mop leaned against a bucket in the corner, water gone cloudy with dirt. Classroom doors were locked, bulletin boards plastered with construction paper pumpkins and jagged, childlike smiles. The smell of chalk dust and old paper clung to the air, heavy, stale, like breath that had been held too long. At exactly 11:57 p.m., the silence broke. A sound echoed through the building, a bell, metallic and sharp, though the brass bell had been taken down years ago. The sound rang again, long and low, and somewhere in the dark, tiny feet shuffled across tile floors. No one was there to see them. Rows of children, moving in single file, pajamas brushing against their sneakers, eyes glassy and unblinking. They followed the sound, heads tilted slightly, as if hypnotized. The line grew longer as doors creaked open without hands, as shadows stretched across lockers, reaching for the children like long fingers. By dawn, Briarwood Elementary was quiet again. The morning sun cast weak light across its brick walls, touching the playground swings and the tetherball pole. But nothing stirred. The town was just beginning to wake up. Coffee brewing in kitchens, bacon sizzling in pans, radios humming the weather forecast. At 7:15 a.m., Principal Daniels unlocked the front doors of the school. He was a big man, graying at the temples, his tie crooked, his face unshaven. He yawned, fumbling with his keys, muttering under his breath, "Goddamn morning meetings," he grumbled. When he stepped inside, the first thing he noticed was the smell. Something sour, like wet ashes. The second thing was the silence. Schools in the morning were never silent, not even before the first bell. There was always chatter, always footsteps, always the whisper of teachers preparing lessons. But today, nothing. He moved down the hallway, shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Doors were ajar, papers scattered across desks, as though a wind had blown through. He frowned, calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" he asked, his voice catching in the stillness. Then he reached room 4B. The door was open, swinging gently on its hinges. 24 desks lined up in neat rows. 23 of them empty. In the far corner by the window, one boy sat. Jacob Price. His small hands clutched a crumpled piece of paper, his knuckles white, his eyes wide, unblinking, stared straight ahead at the chalkboard, as if waiting for something to appear. He didn't flinch when Daniels entered, didn't look up when the principal stammered. "Jacob, where is everyone?" he whispered, as if afraid of the answer. The boy said nothing. He slowly unfolded the paper, setting it on the desk with trembling fingers. A drawing, crude but unmistakable. A tall, faceless man, looming beside a bell tower that no longer existed. Jacob's lips moved, barely parting, the words escaping like smoke. "He called them," he whispered. "He called them with the bell." And then he fell silent again. The desks sat empty. The sunlight fell across them like a spotlight on an abandoned stage. And somewhere, faint, so faint it might have been imagination, the bell tolled once more. Evelyn Marsh woke to the phone ringing. Not the polite trill of a home line, but the sharp, insistent shriek of the school's emergency line. The one she prayed she'd never hear at 6:04 a.m. Her apartment was cold, the old radiator clicking but giving no heat. She rolled from bed, blanket tangled around her legs, heart thumping with a weight she didn't yet understand. She grabbed the receiver with trembling fingers, her voice thick with sleep. "Hello, this is Evie." The voice on the other end was Principal Daniels, low and frantic. "Evelyn, get to the school, now. Something's happened." His words clipped, breathless. Evie sat up, instantly alert. Her teacher's brain clicked into gear. Fire, accident, break-in. Her chest tightened with every possibility. But Daniels gave her nothing else, only hung up, leaving her in the silence of her small kitchen. She dressed quickly, jeans, a sweater with a coffee stain near the cuff, her hair pulled into a hurried bun. Driving through the fog-soaked streets of Briarwood, she noticed how the town felt different that morning. Porch lights stayed on longer. Curtains twitched. Faces peeked out of windows, as though everyone already sensed the shift in the air. By the time she reached the school, police cars flanked the front doors. Red and blue lights pulsed against the brick walls, painting them like wounds. A cluster of parents had already gathered outside, their voices urgent, overlapping, sharp with panic. Evie shoved through the crowd, her breath clouding in the morning chill. "What's going on? What happened?" she asked, her voice high, strained. One mother, eyes wild, grabbed her sleeve. "Where's my son? Where's Danny? You're his teacher. You should know," she shouted, her nails biting into Evie's arm. Evie pulled back, stunned. She scanned the faces around her, fear etched in every line, every tear. every broken whisper. The weight of dread pressed down harder than she thought possible. Inside, the smell hit her first. Ash and something metallic, like pennies left too long in the rain. Papers littered the hallway. One child's backpack abandoned, its zipper half open, a toy truck sticking out. Principal Daniels stood in the doorway of room 4B, pale, sweating. He looked at Evie with eyes that had already aged 10 years since she'd spoken to him on the phone. "You need to see this," he said quietly, as though afraid the walls might hear. Evie stepped inside. Her classroom, familiar yet alien. 24 desks lined up, exactly as she had left them yesterday afternoon. But the seats, empty. Every single one, except the last desk by the window. Jacob Price sat there, silent as stone. Evie's breath caught in her chest. Her students, gone. The thought crashed into her skull like a hammer, leaving her reeling, dizzy. She rushed forward, kneeling beside Jacob, her voice trembling. "Jacob, honey, where is everyone? Can you tell me what happened?" she asked, pleading softly. The boy didn't answer. He stared past her, past the chalkboard, as though seeing something beyond. His small hands clenched around a drawing, crumpled and torn at the edges. Evie gently pried it from his grip, smoothing it on the desk. A faceless figure, tall and thin, drawn in dark pencil strokes. Beside it, the outline of a bell, heavy and jagged. Her stomach turned cold. Jacob's lips parted, barely. His voice came out cracked, brittle, like a whisper dragged across broken glass. The bell. He called them. Then silence again. Evie stared at him, her pulse racing, her body shaking. The words burrowed into her mind, coiling like snakes. And in that moment, with the sunlight spilling across 23 empty desks, Evie Marsh felt something she hadn't felt in years. A dread, so deep, so complete, it hollowed her out from the inside. The day had only begun. The classroom felt colder than the hallway. Not just drafty cold, but bone deep. The kind that seeps into your marrow and makes your teeth ache. Evie shivered, though the October sun was already slanting through the blinds in pale gold stripes. Jacob didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the chalkboard, unblinking, like he was watching something no one else could see. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, each one audible in the silence of the room. Evie crouched beside him, lowering her voice to that soft, coaxing tone teachers used when a child had scraped a knee or lost their lunch money. "Jacob, sweetheart, look at me," she whispered, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. Nothing. No flinch. No blink. No recognition. Principal Daniels hovered in the doorway, his face pale, his voice sharp with panic. "We've called the police. They're searching the grounds." But he hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's like they vanished into thin air." Evie turned on him, her voice trembling with anger. "Vanished? 23 children don't just vanish. Something happened. Something in this room." Jacob stirred, just slightly. His fingers tightened on the edge of the desk, his nails scraping against the wood. Evie's tone softened again. "Jacob, it's okay. You're safe now. Just tell me, where did the others go?" she asked, her breath catching, slowly, painfully. Jacob turned his head. His eyes met hers at last. Wide, glassy, rimmed with red, as though he hadn't blinked in hours. He opened his mouth, lips trembling, but only a rasp came out. A sound, not a word. Evie leaned closer, straining to catch it. "What is it, Jacob? What are you trying to say?" she urged. Jacob's hand shot forward suddenly, startling her. He shoved the crumpled drawing across the desk, pressing it down hard with his palm as though to pin it in place. The faceless man, towering, looming beside the jagged bell. Then Jacob whispered, voice hoarse, broken. He called them. Evie froze. The words echoed in her skull, colliding with her own half-formed memories. The sound of a bell that hadn't rung in years. Principal Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. "He's in shock," he muttered, almost to himself. "Just shock, Evelyn. That's all this is." But Evie didn't believe it, not for a second, because Jacob's hand kept moving across the desk, tracing invisible lines, as though writing words no one else could see. His lips moved silently now, repeating something under his breath. Evie leaned in again, close enough to smell the faint sourness of sleep on him, and she heard it, just barely. Obey. 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 Her stomach clenched, her breath caught, and she staggered back, knocking into the corner of another desk with a hollow thud. Jacob stopped. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a flicker of a second, just a second, his eyes weren't his own. Something older, darker, watched through them. Evie's throat tightened. She whispered, "Oh my God." The bell tolled again. Not in the room. Not in the hall. Not anywhere a human ear should have heard it. But inside her head, metallic and sharp. Jacob smiled, just faintly, and then he fell silent once more. By noon, the news had spread. It always spread fast in Briarwood, a town small enough that you couldn't sneeze without someone saying "bless you" before you'd found a tissue. But this was no ordinary gossip. 23 children gone, vanished like smoke in the wind, and only one boy left behind. The diner on Main Street was packed, the air thick with the smell of frying bacon and burnt coffee. Normally, it was quiet at midday. A few truckers, a few retirees hunched over pie. But now, every booth was full, every stool at the counter taken, voices rising and clashing like storm winds. It was a bus accident. They just don't want to say yet. One man barked, slamming his fist on the table. Nonsense. I drove by. No buses, no wrecks. A woman shot back, her hands trembling as she stirred sugar into her coffee. This is something else. At the far end of the counter, Pastor McCready leaned forward, whispering fiercely, "We've been warned before. Evil comes when we ignore it. We've let sin fester here, and now we're paying." Murmurs of agreement, murmurings of blame, eyes darting, suspicious, sharp. Evie sat at the back of the diner, untouched coffee cooling in front of her. She felt the stares prickling her skin. Whispers followed her like gnats. That's her, the teacher, the one who was supposed to watch them. 23 kids under her care. Her cheeks burned, her chest tightening. She wanted to scream, to tell them she had no control over the impossible, that she was just as horrified, just as broken. But her throat closed up, words trapped like moths against glass. Sheriff Keller stood in the center of the diner, trying to calm the storm. His broad shoulders sagged under the weight of it, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. "We're handling it. There's no need for panic. We'll find out what happened." But no one believed him. Not really. By evening, rumors had already mutated. Some said the children had been taken by a cult in the woods. Others claimed it was government testing, the town being used like lab rats. Still, others whispered about Briarwood's history, about the tragedies no one ever spoke of. At the grocery store, two women argued in the canned goods aisle. "My grandmother used to say the school was cursed," one hissed, clutching her purse to her chest. "Said the headmaster's ghost still walked the halls." "Oh, stop it," the other snapped, tossing soup cans into her cart. "Ghost stories won't bring our children back." But her eyes darted nervously toward the dark windows at the end of the aisle. That night, the town's church bells tolled at sunset, calling people to prayer. The pews overflowed, families clinging to each other, tears streaking cheeks. Pastor McCready's voice thundered through the sanctuary, words sharp, condemning, desperate. "The devil is among us," he shouted, slamming his fist against the pulpit. "He has taken our children as punishment for our silence, for our sins." Gasps, sobs, shouts. The building quaked with grief and fear. Evie sat near the back, her hands clenched in her lap. She felt the eyes again, dozens of them, stabbing into her, as if she carried the blame, as if she had opened the door to the nightmare. Jacob wasn't with her. He was at the sheriff's office, guarded, silent, clutching his drawings like holy scripture. Evie closed her eyes, and again, faint and far, she swore she heard it, the toll of a bell that hadn't existed in decades. 1, 2, 3. The sound slithered into her chest, vibrating through her bones, and when she opened her eyes, she thought, for a moment, that she saw him. Tall, faceless, standing in the shadows near the altar, watching. Evie dreamed of the school again. She was a child in the dream, not a teacher. Her hands small, her legs swinging above the floor as she sat at one of the little desks. The room was too quiet, too still, and when she turned her head, she realized the other desks were filled. But the faces were blurred, smudged, as though someone had erased them with a dirty thumb. At the front of the classroom stood a man, tall, thin, his suit black as soot, his hands clasped neatly behind his back. His face was wrong. It wasn't just faceless, it was unfinished, like clay, not yet molded. He raised one hand and pointed toward the corner, and Evie's gaze followed. There it was, the bell, brass, ancient, its surface scarred and tarnished, hanging from a rope that swayed without wind. When it rang, the sound wasn't just in her ears, it was inside her chest, vibrating her bones, rattling her teeth. She clapped her hands over her ears, but it didn't help. The children stood as one, their chairs scraping back in unison. Their feet moved in rhythm, a slow, steady shuffle, heading toward the bell. Evie tried to scream, tried to call out. "Stop! Don't go!" she shouted, her small voice shrill and breaking. But the faceless man turned his head toward her, or what should have been his head. And though there were no eyes, no mouth, she felt him smile. The bell rang again. Evie woke, gasping, her heart hammering, sweat plastering her hair to her forehead. The room was dark, her bedroom window cracked open to let in the October chill. The sound of the radiator clanking in the corner grounded her, but still, she couldn't shake it. Her ears rang with phantom echoes, her chest aching as though the sound had been real. She stumbled out of bed, turned on the lamp, and pressed her hands to her face. Her breath came in ragged gulps. It was just a dream, she told herself. Just her nerves. Stress from yesterday, from the stairs, the whispers, the empty desks. But deep down she knew. It wasn't just a dream. The phone rang again, jolting her so violently she nearly dropped the lamp. She snatched it up, voice hoarse. "Hello," she rasped. Silence on the other end. Then, very faint, almost drowned in static, the sound of a bell tolling once, twice, 3 times. Evie slammed the receiver down, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. By morning, she forced herself back to the school, the building looming like a dark bruise on the town's edge. She walked into room 4B, her heart pounding, her eyes darting to the desk by the window. Jacob was already there, seated quietly, as though he hadn't left at all. His hands worked furiously over paper, pencil scratching, his shoulders stiff. Evie approached slowly, her voice hesitant. "Jacob, what are you drawing?" she asked, careful not to startle him. The boy lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot, rimmed with shadows too dark for an 8-year-old. He didn't speak, only slid the paper toward her. Evie's stomach turned cold. Another drawing of the man, the same tall, faceless figure. Only this time, the children were clearer, their hands linked, their eyes blank, their mouths open in a silent chorus as they walked toward the bell. Beneath it, in shaky, uneven letters, Jacob had scrawled one word over and over, filling the page. Called. 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 Evie's hand shook as she held the paper. She whispered, more to herself than to Jacob. "You heard it too, didn't you?" Jacob's lips moved. For the first time since the night of the disappearance, he answered her. "He's still calling. He won't stop until we all go." Thanks for sipping tonight's tale with Haunted Brew. Don't forget to subscribe, and sleep tight if you still can.